with us this morning. We're going to change things up a little bit. Of course, you know, we usually do testimonies and life stories, but I think this one is just as important. We're going to change the things up, as I said, since the devotion I was talking about the great storm. All right, but right now we have with us in studio the director of the Tobago Emergency Management Agency, Allan Stewart. Good morning, Mr. Stewart.
Good morning, and good morning to all of your listeners on.
All right, so let's start it again. Yeah, the mic is now up. Good morning, Mr. Stewart.
You missed my good voice. Good morning to everyone, and good morning to the listeners of 89.5 FM. It's good to be here.
Definitely. It's so good to have you here as well, Mr. Stewart. As I was telling you earlier on, we want to change things up a little bit. I think it's very important to, even as we encourage others, it's good to help persons be prepared. And we did a devotions earlier where we spoke about the great storm and how the people weren't prepared for Katrina, Hurricane Katrina.
That's right.
And the thing is, the signs were there. You know, the flags went up, the temperature in the air dropped, everything started to change. And they just still weren't prepared. Thankfully, we have the Tobago Emergency Management Agency and the Meteorological Center. Of course, you guys could give us information on how to, you know what's happening. And you today, on our People Helping People segment, you can tell us how to be prepared.
That's right.
So let's get started, Mr. Stewart. I've realized lately the weather is definitely changing very fast, if I may say so. The hurricane season started when? In June?
The 1st of June.
Right.
And it goes until the 30th of November. That's the traditional period that we expect those storms to last, especially as we go deeper into the season. We expect things to heat up a little bit, and we are seeing that heating up at the east of us. We are seeing those storms that are coming one after the next.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I would say, nothing within the period has happened to Tobago or, in any kind of, with Trinidad and Tobago. I know they have some marine issues and whatnot down in Trinidad ever so often. Tell us, Mr. Stewart, what can one do in preparing for natural disasters or,
One of the first things I normally will say to us in the field of emergency management is that along the disaster cycle, preparation is one of those important elements of the cycle.
Yes.
And therefore, this is extended not just to those who are in the field of emergency management, but also every citizen. I think we have seen from the records of those who have gone before us or life stories in the past that people who were ill prepared, they tend to suffer the brunt of anything. One of the things that we have to have an appreciation for is that we share this planet, this earth, with a number of hazards. And some of those hazards, based on our understanding, is that while we may say we live in the most beautiful part of the earth, the tropics, we are prone to, we share the space. And let me just say this. I recall a young man telling me once that the sun was too hot. And for some reason I reflect on God, and I said, God's sun is too hot. And then you think about it a little bit. What is important there is that we have to be more or less prepared for the conditions that we are exposed to, and those conditions also among the things that come along are hazards. Hazards as it relates to, as we are in the hurricanes season, I will use this moment to speak about hurricanes. Hurricanes, I was listening coming down, you were talking about Katrina. Katrina started to the east of us and eventually impacted devastatingly the eastern border of the US coastline. But how prepared are we is how much you and I, the person who is listening to this program, is prepared. And we need to do the necessaries in preparation, doing things that will help us to survive such hazards. And let me think about some of those things that we can easily do. One of the things is that we look at our exposure, the things where we live, the type of constructions, the level of internal preparedness in the home itself
Yes.
for survival. The state in its system of disaster management will ask the citizens of the country to do at least 72 hours of preparedness, meaning therefore you need to be able to have, whether it's relief items, emergency supplies, emergency equipment, so you can survive for at least 72 hours on your own. This is not too much to ask.
No, it's not too much to ask at all.
No, it is not.
So, but through this interview, I want persons at the end of it to be able to say, okay, these are some of the things I need to be able to do to prepare from home. And of course, these are the things I need for survival. If there's a disaster and I'm stranded or whatnot, I must be able to survive on my own in the next 72 hours. So if you can, of course, list some of these preparedness items or techniques at home. Let's start at home.
So we are in the home. The first thing that is necessary is an emergency plan within the home,
Right.
whether formal or informal. From where I sit, I would prefer to say a formal emergency plan where you sit around with the family and decide what we're going to do if X were to take place. So, one of the most important things is information. Firstly, you need to be aware and know what is you're up against. So, you must be able to allow yourself to hear what is happening on the outside. And so we advise people that you need to have a battery operated radio. That's
Right.
one, in order to gather information. Stay tuned to information as it's passed. We ask people that you ensure that you have emergency lighting. So it means therefore that the necessaries that will allow you to have emergency lighting, such as flashlights,
Yes.
lamps, things like these that will allow for easy illumination for a period, you do that. One of the more important things is sustainability. Emergency supplies in the area of food items are very critical.
Yes.
Not to give quick plug, but vital supplies. It's important that you have
Very
the necessary
vital.
canned foods, and also that those canned foods be protected in a particular way. Now I just want to share, because the people who are at most risk, the people who are holding on to hope, the people that who are most vulnerable in their society, right now they are saying in their minds, what's Stewart talking about? You know, it's about, I can't even find enough money to keep food on the table. You're telling me I'm putting away 72 hours of food stuff. You know, things like that. But how can this be done? There are ways to go about it, and we like to share. You know, every now and again, every fortnight or every month, you may go to the store. It's important that when you're picking up your grocery item, that you put away something. The extracting of corned beef, sardine, things like that.
Right. The persons who eat that, of course.
That's right. So you take care of those supplies that will help you during such a crisis.
Yes.
Another important element is personal effects such as passports, birth certificates,
Right.
certificates for the children in terms of their identification. Simple securing these things during a crisis is most critical, because even to get back on your feet, I'm not sure if you ever experienced losing or hearing somebody said they lost all of their identifications in their wallet, their entire purse. And
That's
then you go to
serious
get a
stuff.
driver's permit and they say, well, you need to identify yourself who you are. You know?
Yes.
And you say, well, I just lost everything.
Yeah.
A gentleman passed that story to me recently. So it's important that we understand these things that are most vulnerable during a crisis. Even your past marriage certificates, things that you may have hosting information such as CD-ROM, flash drives, things like that. It's important that you think about the future continuity. Business continuity in the home is very important, and therefore you secure those things. It's important that you look at the external of the home. For example, the surroundings, trees that may be become missiles to your home.
Yes.
In addition to that, you may want to have them cut and pruned properly. You may look at your roofing. The roofing is that part of your home that really tells whether there is a level of resilience and whether you really have the tenacity to go through the storm.
Yes.
I remember the story about, the disaster story is a very simple one. It just goes back to my days in kindergarten with the pigs and that home where it was built with bush and then it was built with branches and huff and puff. Your home need to be able to withstand that huff and puff of a storm.
Right.
It's as simple as that. So therefore, 2 kilograms of nails or screws to your roofs will secure the perimeter of the roof itself, ensuring that those roofing sheets are well intact. Those are simple procedures. It's important to understand that during any severe weather event, such as a storm with winds above probably 40 miles per hour, can cause shrubs and trees to fall, and it will interfere with our emergency or electrical power line system. With lines going, power going, it affects immediately our communications,
Yes.
our power to make it work, and more importantly, even water supply.
Yes.
So it's important that as you think about these things, that you ensure that you have power to keep you going. Some people may want to invest in generators. That comes with its own safety as to where you store gas and things like that. So you keep those things in mind. So if you notice, I'm going into the nuts and bolts of the whole thing.
It's important.
Well, and that is so key. And the other thing is that as much as we may be prepared, there are things that will happen.
Of course.
If it's not happening to you, it may be happening to your neighbor.
Yeah.
And therefore, as you go a little wider, it's important that you secure things like emergency equipment. Emergency equipment can start with tarpaulins.
Right.
It's important to invest in a tarpaulin. A good tarpaulin could cost something like just under maybe $1,800, a very good tarpaulin.
Right.
It means that therefore you can lose a couple sheets or your neighbors can lose a couple sheets. I tell people the goods and the products and the commodities that you have below your roof. To me, that is what it's all about.
Yeah.
If you can secure those, 2 sheets of galvanized could make the difference with whether your computer or your television set flat screen survive the storm with clean water soak. So it's important to have these items, or not only for yourself but also to help others who may need help. A good first aid kit is always, because I'm going to the point where things can happen.
Yes.
And therefore having a first aid kit, one that is really up to date, is very important. A first aid kit, you may think about insect bites, you may think about swellings, you may think about small cuts and bruises. So it's important to not only have the kit, but understand its application and the contents of it, how sustaining it, how important sustaining that emergency kit or that first aid kit is in or during a particular period. Many times we have situations where persons may have an emergency kit, but the children are making a mess of the kit. They may use up the batteries for their own purposes. They may remove things move things around. It's important to know where they are at all times. This, my friends, provide a certain level of comfort and a certain level of hope. Going further upfield, it's important for you to know emergency numbers. Who are the persons to contact if I am affected by
Absolutely.
the storm? During the communication will always be a challenge, and therefore it's important that you report your incident by whatever means necessary.
Yes.
Our contact numbers are 0065 660 6096 and 660 7489. And if all that I've just said you can't remember, just remember 211.
Yes.
One of the beautiful things about Tobago that will provide a sense of hope to the listeners is that we are a small island, but I think we have done, based on the resources that are available to us through the efforts of the Tobago House and Assembly, we have done well over the years in preparing ourselves for, as you were talking earlier this morning about the Great Storm.
Yes.
And there are certain levels of threat that the country is asked to prepare themselves for. Level 1, level 2. We work towards those things in the field of disaster management, and it's important that you, the listeners out there, understand that you know where your shelters are located. Know exactly what governs the operations of the shelter. And I will use this opportunity just to give you a few tips. That being a shelteree is a very challenging exercise. It's not the best of comfort. You are allotted 40 square feet of space. 40 square feet of space, and for those of you who are trying to imagine what it looks like, it means that you're talking about just 4 feet as wide as a sheet of ply and just 2 feet longer than the length. So that is what 40 square feet will look like. It means therefore that you may be sharing space for quite a while with persons who may be not your friend. It means therefore you have to try to avert as much as possible that possibility, because it's not a very friendly environment,
right,
even though we try to make it. So I tell people these things because it's the reality.
Yes.
Living as a shelteree is not a very nice thing. During 2004 and 2005, I recall persons coming in and saying how they want to recover as quickly as possible.
Yes.
They're tired going by the neighbor and ask them to take a bath. You know, somebody handing you clothing that you cannot refuse. It's not an easy period.
Yes.
But I'm saying all this that there is hope, and if we prepare ourselves, we are able to really manage these hazards that we are up against.
Yeah, so definitely that's at the home, and that's, you know, the structure in which we live in, of course. So I know you touched a little bit on the survival techniques as well, because we started getting into the shelter. I know you see Boy Scouts and Pathfinders and these kinds of groups would have definitely assisted in preparing for us. You know, if we have to light a fire, we have no matches.
Yes, so be prepared.
You know, so some survival techniques. Can you share with us some other survival techniques, Mr. Stewart? Let's say we are stranded here, God forbid, on, let's say, I don't know, the house is down. Let's create a scenario. The house is down. We have an open space. You know, what are some of the things we can do? We can start using the food that we started putting away, you know?
Yeah, one of the things that you have to pay attention to is that in order to survive the onslaught of the hazard is how do you coexist with debris around you. One of the things is that you definitely have to avoid the chance of being injured after you have successfully weathered the storm itself.
Yes.
You have to know that there is things like insects that will be restless and moving around you. You have to prepare yourself for that, and if you were to be, it's important that you learn a little first aid. Make sure that there's somebody at least in the home with the knowledge of first aid, that if you were to be bitten by a particular insect that you know that will cause harm to you, then you do the necessaries to protect life and property. One of the other things that you'll have is, in some cases, is flood waters and what goes along with flood water. It was a study was done, and they said in Guyana you had a situation that after one of the great floods that they had there, it was wondering why most of the men were coming down with leptospirosis. Leptospirosis is one of those hazards that comes along with rodents and rats, things like that. And therefore, you have outhouses things like cesspit tanks and soak away losing their connectivity, and those are some of the things that will easy to infrastructure that will go in around the home, and therefore there could be seepage of into flash flood waters into your property, even though your property remains intact. So it's important to be careful when entering into flood waters. You can be infected. You need to treat open wounds, protect open wounds in a particular, because you can be infected as well. You need to ensure that post of the event itself, that you even look at your vegetables. People will be selling things very cheap, but you have to understand that even in buying simple things like vegetables, they could be now be contaminated by flood waters. Things like your cabbage, vegetables, anything that you may think about that people may want to, that you may be getting a nice price for. Make sure that you do the necessaries. I think it is advised that you sprinkle a few, whether it's 10 drops of chlorine or something like that, things into the water, and make sure that you rinse these things in a particular manner. But you take the necessaries to protect yourself. So these are some of the survival techniques, but you not only for your personal health, but also things around you, such as your clothing, your pictures, your understand. Let's suppose your clothing were to be water soaked. It is advisable that you put it into a freezer to store it until you can really get it if you want to restore it. So it is water soaked. There are ways and means of how you go about these things. The program doesn't allow for, and I don't have all the information about these techniques.
And we're actually closer to the time of wrapping up too. So, but what I want to do quickly, I know persons, this is a topic you never expected to have on hope, but there is hope in this story, there's hope in this topic, because Mr. Stewart, he would have brought some answers. Now you know how to prepare at home. Sometimes we might just be sitting there, we might know, but Mr. Stewart brought some reminders to us this morning. These are some of the things we can do inside the home for structure, some survival techniques.
There's just one thing because I keep, this program always speaks to hope. And there's this one thing about hope that I normally tell people. I have done a lot of damage assessments and needs analysis in my career. And one of the things, fire victims, people who have lost their all. I want to say to you that you could become a victim. You could be one of those persons who may lost everything, regardless of all that we have said here. But be very hopeful. Be very optimistic. In all of my probably 18 to 19 years career in this particular field, I have never one day saw where a person would have lost their property. And let's suppose that property was a 1-bedroom house. It always exceeds. The point I'm making is that people recover better. And make it your ambition. If ever you find yourself in a situation, don't become hopeless. There's enough support, whether through the state or the community, to help you rebound, and you will rebound better than you was before. And I urge you, whenever you're in that state of recovery, try to rebuild better. Try to build with enough resilience to be better the next time around. So I want to leave those words, because sometimes people are faced with situations and become very hopeless. But there's no need to be hopeless, even if you recognize you're looking up and you just see the sky, or your investment that's went down the drain, that dream house that you built that's went up in flames, or flood waters that's ripped through everything. There is hope, and you will recover better.
So you want to wrap up before me, Mr. Stewart, but I don't want you to leave just yet. I was actually going to open the lines for 5 minutes so persons could call 489-3828. You might have a question or some concern that you wanted to ask the emergency management agency. So you want to have an idea how to get a situation resolved at your home, in preparation for the great storm, quote unquote, if you know what I mean, right? So probably you want to just call now, 489-3828. We just have about 1.5 minutes basically we'll probably take about 2 calls, 489-3828. If you have any questions to Mr. Stewart, if you want to know some of the things that you have to do in preparing for, you know, a situation at your home or whatnot. We're talking definitely about natural disasters. We're talking about storms. We're talking about fires, whatever it may be. Alright, so I'm going to leave the lines open a little bit as we talk, but we definitely have about 15 more minutes right here on holding on to positive expectations. So you know we have to take things up by the time this interview is done because we have to dance into the new week. Alright, so Mr. Stewart, let me just ask you a quick question here because, you know, sometimes people would say the state or quote-unquote THE they're not doing enough, but in my well, it's not a question, it's kind of like I'm throwing something at you here for comments more so. You know, so many things happen based on what you said. We have a responsibility to prepare and take care of our homes, take care of our inside and outside. But most times when things happen, people start calling on the government and blaming them for things that would have happened.
Yeah, there are a number of myths out there. One of the things people look for compensation. There's nothing like compensation. Your property is your property. It is yours. That's the right that you enshrine in the Constitution. And therefore, if you lose your property, the state have a requirement based on the disaster management system to provide you with relief.
Right.
Relief, not compensation. Compensation means therefore that the state probably was guilty of an act that interfered or destroyed your property.
Right.
If that is such a case, then the state can be held responsible. And they will undertake, as they have done in the past, that responsibility. But as it relates to events, your property, your trees hanging over your house, for God in heaven's sake, you cut your tree. Don't depend on the state to come in to cut your tree. It is your tree. You water it, you groom it. It is your property, and therefore whatever the state provide, it can be seen in the sense of compensation. Insurance is an important thing too.
Yes.
Right now we are embarked on seeking to do things like look at building codes to try to see if we can move the process forward where people are held to a particular standard. If you're going to sell sauce by the side of the road, I think, in my own humble view, that that building code needs to be in effect that whatever that structure is, needs to be built with a certain level of resilience and well placed. Where you place it is very important. Yes. So land use policy is one of the things that we are looking at heavily, coming out of that 8th element in the Comprehensive Economic Development Plan that speaks to that pillar that speaks to environmental sustainability. Right. To me, that is key going forward, and we are working towards. So you'll be hearing us in the community, coming to you, talking to you more about building resilience in your home and insurance. So as we make those transitions, people need to be prepared to do that, to make the shift as well.
Excellent. So, well, the minute and a half is gone. We got no calls. I believe everyone should know this morning how to prepare themselves. So as you go, Mr. Stewart, I want you to leave us with the numbers again so persons can contact you, and of course, if something is, you know.
So we're talking about 660-0065. That's one. That's our search centers that they are there in the community for you. And 660-6096. That's another. And at the head office is 660-7489. I repeat, 7489. And if you can't remember anything, just call 211. All right. They are always there. They are part of our communication matrix. They are part of the communication system for notification, and we will be happy to. We are there to provide you with a particular type of service that we consider to be diamond standard.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Allan Stewart of the Tobago Emergency Management Agency. Continue to do a wonderful job for the persons of Tobago.